All right, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's version of Success Experts. Today, we're going to be talking about study skills and exam prep. If you are just now coming in, I will have to admit you into the session. So just bear with me as we go through. Other people may be joining. Can everybody hear me okay? All right. So first, we're just going to go over the objectives for today's presentation. First, we want to talk about your reflection questions. We're going to look a little bit about the study cycle. We're going to talk about intense study sessions, active learning strategies, and then we're going to do a little reflection on the back end, and then we'll wrap it up with a conclusion. To start off, active reflection in the beginning. So when we think about studying versus learning, do we actually know what the difference is between the two of those? Or is there even a difference in your own perspective? And then thinking about when you're learning information or if you're studying information, would you be able to teach that information later on? How prepared would you be able to tell someone else or relay that information to another person? And just keep those in mind as we go throughout the presentation, and we'll come back and do some reflection at the end. When we review the study cycle, there's 5 steps in the study cycle, and it includes a preview, attend, review, study, and assess. So during your preview cycle, stage of your cycle, you're going to really look over this material, make sure you're looking before you go to class, you're skimming, you're maybe making summaries of the information that you're going to hear in class later on, and also just looking at questions that you might have about the information that's going to be presented in that course or class section. The second stage of the study cycle is going to involve actually participating. So actually going to class. So you have to be present, you have to be there, and you have to be focused and concentrating on the information that's being provided to you. The third stage of the study cycle is a review. So within the first 24 hours after you go to class and you've been attentive and you've been taking notes, you go back within the next 24 hours and you review those notes to help fill in the gaps and develop any questions you may have for the next block of course instruction. The fourth stage of the study cycle involves studying. So this is when you're going to break down your study cycles into blocks. And it's normally 3 to 5 short sessions per day, or if you're someone who does more studying on the weekend, you may, sorry about that. You may actually read your notes from day to day and make connections throughout the week. And the fifth stage of the study cycle involves checking yourself. So am I using the right materials? If I'm writing on index cards or using Quizlet, are these materials actually helping me? Do I know enough of the material that I'm teaching myself to teach someone else? A little bit in depth into the study cycle is the first step, preview. So make sure you're reading prior to class. This is a big step for you guys who are in college and you're currently taking courses. If you're reading material prior to class, then you're ahead of the game. If you're making notes also of any questions you might have during that course or that block of instruction, you're also ahead of the game. And then also just scanning the material. You may have a busy schedule and you may not be able to actually read all the material prior to class. Just scanning the material can actually help you as well. Another big thing is you have to actually attend class. So you actually have to be present and focused on the material that you're about to learn. Make sure that you're taking notes and you're answering any questions that you had if you're reading prior to class and you formulated your own group of questions about the material, make sure you're being able to take notes and answer those questions for yourself. And then a review. Make sure, again, like I said before, you review your notes within 24 hours of the course. Ask yourself any questions you may have based upon your notes. And then also another thing is repetition. Make sure that some courses involve memorization, so therefore you are repetitively writing notes, and that does help you retain some of that information. Study. Again, rewriting your notes and answering any questions you may have. Any kind of repetition you're doing, if you're creating index cards and you're going through those, or if you're in a group study or a focus group and you're actually asking each other questions, repeating those questions and those answers actually help you retain that material. Being organized is also something that can help you. If you're organized with your notes, if you're using index cards, if you're using highlighters to highlight specific material, highlight material on a specific subject, that can also assist you in retaining that type of information. Another big thing is to be aware of your location in which you choose to study. Some of us may go in the library, some of us may go home to study, some of us may study in our dorm rooms. So just be cautious of where you choose to study, because if maybe you're studying in your dorm room, you may get distracted by other things that are going on. If you're studying in the Starbucks in the library and it's very loud and there's a lot of people, there may be a lot of distractions to take you away from actually retaining that information. And finally, assess. Look back on what you accomplished. So you're doing these study sessions and you're learning this material. You may be reading prior to class. Look back and see what you've accomplished. Did you accomplish your goals? Did you have a particular goal set in mind for a test that you were going to study? Will you be willing to offer your notes to a peer or a fellow classmate if they are for some reason out of class or can't take notes that day? Could you actually teach this material to someone else? So those are the questions you have to ask yourself after you have done all the other steps, looking back to assess what your progress is. So this brings us to intense study sessions. And some of you already may be familiar with these, but these are going to be sessions in which you basically block out a section of time for yourself to actually study. So during these sections, prior research has shown that studying in shorter bursts of time will actually assist in the retaining of information. So during the first 1 to 2 minutes of your study session, set a goal for yourself. How long am I going to study before I take a break? Am I going to study 30 minutes or am I going to study for 50 minutes? So study with focus and eliminate all possible distractions that you can during that section of time that you've blocked off to study. Make sure that you're taking breaks. Normally about a 45-minute session of studying intensely and then about a 15-minute break afterwards, and that's an hour block of time. So normally your classes run about 50 minutes. You have a 10-minute leeway after that to walk to the next class that starts upon the next hour. So it gives you a little space there to just decompress, let your brain kind of absorb some of that information, and it rewards yourself. So next time you sit down for that next hour of study block or next 50 minutes, your brain is prepared to retain that information. Give yourself 5 or so minutes to review your material you've covered and assess your progress. So if you said at your 1 to 2 minutes, you said, my goal is to study for 45 minutes straight, intensely without any distractions, and then to take a 15-minute break. So look back and say, did I actually accomplish that? Did I study and did I retain the amount of information that I sat down to study and retain? Some active learning strategies. When you think about the materials that you're learning in class, you're learning materials from PowerPoints, from lectures, you're learning materials from different movies and films and things like that that you're given, books that you're given to take notes on, or maybe take notes off of a PowerPoint presentation in some format. So if you have questions about these, make sure that you're writing those questions down as you go, especially if you're someone who's looking at that information prior to class or even skimming that information. Again, consider your location, where you sit down to study, where you sit in class. Visual learners do better when they're in the front of the classroom. So if you're more of a visual person and you learn more on maybe seeing the pictures that go along with the words on the slide, or something else that you're better able to view from the front of the classroom, make sure that you're moving yourself to the front of the classroom. Studying in your room or common area may lead to feeling less comfortable, like, oh, well, now I've studied in here. This doesn't feel like a place that I can come and relax. So oftentimes students need to move away from actually studying in their comfortable areas. So that way, whenever you do actually study in a more structured environment, and then you come back to that area, you're able to relax without feeling like you need to study at the whole point in time. So taking notes, when you take notes, make sure you're listening, make sure you're filling in the answers and the gaps that you have as far as the information goes. Think about writing your notes versus typing your notes. Again, this goes back to one of the stages in the study cycle where repetition means a lot. So if you're writing your notes, you're actually physically thinking about what you're writing, and you're actually physically writing that down with your hand. If you're typing your notes, I know a lot of people type their notes, bring their laptops to class, things like that. But if you're typing your notes, you're not actually getting that physical aspect of writing down what the information is. So if you're someone who types your notes, maybe try next time you go into a study session to write your notes and see how it helps you. Study groups. So if you're involved in any kind of study groups or just want to get involved in class, I would encourage you to study with your peers, because your peers can help explain information from a different perspective. So they may have heard something in a lecture or in a course or a forum that you didn't hear. So remember that your peers can also help you with your active learning strategies. So active reflection in the end. What do you do? So I want you guys to think about some things that each of you do when you study. What are some methods that you used? And then think about whether or not those methods have been helpful. Also, think about unhelpful habits. Think about some things that you do that are probably not as helpful as you think they are, or some things that you figured out that just doesn't work for you. Like if you're a visual learner, you do better writing your notes versus something else. So what should you stop doing? Then also, how can you use the information? How can you prepare for an exam based upon the information you've been given? So for instance, if you're taking a biology exam, is it going to be easier to prepare for that exam by just reading the notes? Or is it going to be easier to prepare for that exam using a combination of reading and also a repetition of possibly writing those notes, incorporating some index cards, or even a focus group or a peer group, that way that you can bounce the material off of each other? Wow, I went through that really fast. So does anyone have any questions, comments, suggestions? I can go back through the slide. Let me see if anyone's said anything in the chat. Does anyone have any questions about particular things, or does anyone want to talk about some things that maybe they started using, some methods that they use as far as studying, and share that with the rest of the group, or maybe some things that they figured out that was unhelpful, so they stopped using those? No? Then feel free to put it in the chat if you would like. Okay, so one of a fellow student on here said that she created a bullet journal to organize her assignments. It helped her have some sort of to-do list. So some sort of organization. We touched on that a little bit. If you're organized and you know what assignments you have coming up and you know how to study for them or how you're going to prepare for them, you can properly block off your time. And let's see, I'm still trying to find the best study space. I don't know how to say your name. Is it Jakaya? Jakaya, can you tell me where you have tried to study before? Grace, there is not one that you have to fill out, but I am taking everyone's name down. So if you're doing this for a credit, for a scholarship, or something other than that, I will have your name down. You're welcome. Okay, so Jakaya, so think about your dorm. I'm sure that you have a roommate and that can be distracting, but also that's where you're mostly doing your downtime. So that's where you go and you sleep and you're showering and all that. And then in the lounge could probably be very distracting with people coming in and out of the dorm. So I would encourage you to find a secluded area or spot. And the library has several rooms that you can go into. It's a secluded room with a table and it'll have 4 or 5 chairs. I believe those start on the 2nd floor. So I would encourage you to try somewhere like that to study because it seems like that you possibly have a lot of distractions in the areas in which you're trying to study. Okay, Jonathan always scans all his PowerPoints or slides right before a test. So do you scan them right before a test just to like refresh, or you just only, is that the only time that you're actually studying that material? Okay. Okay. So he's refreshing himself before a test. So this is just like talking about refreshing or not actually refreshing, but looking over your notes prior to going into a block of a course instruction. So if you're looking at your notes, you kind of know what to expect. And if you're, yes. And if you are studying and you've already blocked off your times to study and you're now right before the test and you just want to refresh and just go over it, just give your mind another look at it. It's always good to do that, especially a visual learner will remember words and keywords and specific things about a sentence that can help them actually do better on a test. Would anybody else like to add anything, or does anybody have any questions? Okay, I don't see anyone chiming in on the chat or audio or visually. I guess we will wrap it up. I will go back to the slide at the very end if you would like to take down this information. This is for the Center for Student Success. If you need assistance or anything like that in regards to planning, study skills, note-taking, please reach out to us. We have an online appointment system and you can use that to schedule an appointment with a success expert. Okay, I think we have one more question. Hold on one moment. Jakaya asks, would it be better to do a practice quiz or a study guide? I think both of these can be beneficial. Practice quiz could actually test your information and you could create your study guide to actually do that practice quiz. Practice quiz is probably going to tell you what you know prior to you actually studying the material. So if you just wanted to say, okay, I went to class today and we reviewed this material and I know we have a quiz on this material 3 days from now. I want to take a practice quiz and see what amount of information I retained. So yes, and Jonathan is right. The information, once you go on the practice quiz and you see the information you get wrong, that leads you to go and look that up to see what the correct answer is. So that way you're actively participating in your thinking and what you're doing as far as obtaining the information, filling in the gaps, and answering your questions. But both of those skills are very useful if you're not already using those. You're welcome. Okay, guys, so I guess we're going to wrap it up. If no one has any questions or comments, if you are doing this for a scholarship and you need attendance taken, I have taken attendance of everyone who has logged on. You're welcome. If you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out to us at the Center for Student Success. Have a good afternoon.